I'm in the pattern at an uncontrolled airport with a student. There's two airplanes in the pattern. A weekend warrior cuts us off and we almost get hit. What's going on, guys? My name is Ryan Huber. I'm a corporate pilot and certified flight instructor, and I wanted to talk to you guys today about uncontrolled patterns and the proper ways to enter a pattern that is uncontrolled, fly those patterns, and communicate with traffic. So we'll take a minute here to jump into my screen real quick, and I want to talk about a situation that I had with a student in the pattern at an airport here in Arizona that is uncontrolled, where there were two airplanes in the pattern on downwind. We are the aircraft behind the other airplane in front of us. A third party comes into the pattern to cross over and enter the downwind and cuts us off, does not enter the pattern properly, and almost causes a collision. So let's jump into my screen. I want to talk about an advisory circular that goes over the proper ways to enter an uncontrolled pattern, the situation that happened, and how that could have been prevented, and how to do this safely. So we're in my screen here. I have a pattern pulled up, and I wanted to go over in Paint what happened in the situation where we were in the pattern, the improper entry into the uncontrolled pattern, and then the correct entry, which we'll go over, which is shown in an advisory circular. And just talk about this topic because I think it's something that a lot of CFIs might not know, or a lot of private pilots or student pilots might not know, as far as different ways to enter an uncontrolled pattern. Especially if you're in bigger cities and you go to more towered airports and it's literally a box checked for a check ride just to go to these uncontrolled airports. It might not be something you're too familiar with. For my private, I did most of my training and my home base was an uncontrolled airport, so I think I had a little bit more familiarization with operations at airports without towers. So we'll go ahead and jump into the situation. So I'll mark us. We are in the pattern right here. So here we are in the pattern. We are crosswind to downwind as we hear an airplane about 3 miles out from the runway coming in to enter the pattern. Now, there's one more aircraft in the pattern. We'll represent them by a blue. Since they're more of our friend, we'll do red for the guy that cut us off. So they are in the downwind, pretty much represented by this airplane here. So we have two airplanes in the pattern, this bluish purple color, and then we have us, the black airplane. So we're cruising along, we're crosswind to downwind as a third airplane makes a call in 3 miles to, in this case, we'll say the south of the airport, coming in from this direction to cross over the top and enter the downwind. So we make a crosswind call, we make another call turning downwind, and this airplane, they make a call saying that they will enter the downwind behind the aircraft. They only refer to one airplane, in this case being the front airplane. So we make a call and say, are you going to enter the downwind behind the first airplane or the second airplane? Just announcing and making them realize the fact that there are two airplanes in the pattern. There's not just one, and we want them to enter properly because we're kind of confused. I'm with a student pilot. Thankfully, this guy owns a flight school. He was an experienced pilot in this circumstance. We both knew what we were doing, CFI, and someone who owns a flight school when this situation occurred. So he decides to clarify to us, yeah, we're going to come in between you guys. You're still pretty far out. Now, in this case, we had perfect spacing with the airplane ahead of us, and we weren't too far out. So I'm just watching, kind of waiting for this guy to come into my view to see what happens. He knows that I'm there, and I'm seeing where he is to make my call on what to do. The student in this case in the left seat is still flying the pattern. We're practicing patterns for his private pilot check ride. So he comes in. This guy ends up coming in front of us, and eventually I see him very close. He comes in between the two airplanes, and I say, you know, you're crowding us, you're getting really close, and eventually we have to make an evasive maneuver. And I go ahead, take control of the airplane, and pull the plane off to the right here to avoid colliding with him, because he does a pretty square turn coming in here and just squares his turn at traffic pattern altitude across the runway, square into the downwind, and ends up cutting us off. So he cuts us off. I say, hey, you cut us off pretty bad there. He gets pretty upset over the radios, and then he ends up crowding this guy, the front airplane, who defends me over the radios on the CTAF frequency and says, yeah, you cut him off pretty bad. I saw the whole thing. And now you're crowding me. This guy ends up landing on the runway and makes a call back because the red airplane, the cutoff guy, ends up crowding him and almost lands on top of him. And then we have to extend our downwind to base because we almost come in on top of the guy that cuts us off. So poorly typical situation that might happen in an uncontrolled pattern and something that could be prevented. So we'll talk about the proper way to enter an uncontrolled pattern, because a lot of people, I think it's the right way to enter a pattern, to come across the runway at traffic pattern altitude and then just come in and join the downwind, which isn't a problem if there's nobody in the pattern or there's one guy that you're communicating with or it works out. But there's a much, much better way that I think some people don't teach, so we'll go over that. Okay, so here I have pulled up Advisory Circular 90-66 Bravo, which talks about non-towered airport flight operations. And if you go down to page 9, it talks about the preferred and alternate entry when crossing midfield. Straight out of the PHAC, the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, chapter 14. So here, the alternate midfield entry, this is what our friend or foe did in the pattern when he came in. So he came in at pattern altitude, middle of the downwind, and came in, which isn't a problem if there's only one airplane, maybe on base or on downwind, and beam the numbers that he's following in. If there was just that one airplane in the pattern, that would have been perfectly fine. But we were in the pattern, crosswind to downwind, and basically midfield downwind as he cut us off, came right in front of us, and we had to pull out to the right and get out of the way. So what he should have done, being that there was two airplanes in the pattern, he should have done the preferred entry crossing over midfield. Also called, or at least my flight instructor called it, the teardrop entry into the pattern at a non-controlled field. Now I know a teardrop entry is technically a procedure for holding patterns or procedure turns and instruments, so that might not be the technical terminology as far as calling it a teardrop entry, but we'll go with that. You could call it the 270 entry or just the preferred entry when crossing over midfield, or they go over in the PHAC. And this entry is to make your standard calls. Normally I teach you make a 10-mile call, a 5-mile call, and a 3-mile call coming into an uncontrolled airport so that everybody on frequency is well aware of what we're doing. And then if there are airplanes in the pattern, this is what I teach and what the PHAC recommends that you do. So you should come over the pattern at pattern altitude plus 500 feet. That way you're over the pattern. Anybody in the pattern, you're not going to cause any conflict with them. So regardless of how many people are in the pattern or whatnot, come in over the pattern at 500 feet, and then instead of directly entering the downwind, you're going to clear and fly over the traffic pattern approximately 2 miles out, and then make a descending right turn to enter behind whoever is in the pattern. So you're coming over the top plus 500 feet, and in our case, we would have had the two airplanes here and here. We would have been well clear by the time he made this descending teardrop right turn to enter behind us. We would have had perfect spacing. The first airplane probably would have been on the runway or on the roll for their touch and go. I would have been base. He would have been downwind. Pretty plain and simple. So I think a lot of people don't teach this entry, or I'm not sure. Leave in the comments, if this is what you normally do, if this is something that's common practice, or if it's something that's more new to you, or you've only done maybe one time as a student pilot or as a flight instructor. So I'm not sure. Tell me how familiar you are with these pattern entries, and what else could have been done in that situation. So I just wanted to go over that topic, highlight a situation that happened to my student and I in the pattern at an uncontrolled field here in Arizona, doing a little fun flight, little flight instruction, helping him with his private pilot check ride, and asked you guys what you think about these entry methods, and provide a little value for student pilots, private pilots, and the flight instructor who might need a little bit more knowledge on this topic. So I appreciate the time. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any comments, questions, or anything, leave it below in the comment section. Leave this video a like, and I'll go ahead and let you guys know I have a group on Facebook, ATP Flight School Students and Alumni. We have about 2,500 members. I'll pull that up right here. ATP Students and Alumni group on Facebook. If you are interested in ATP Flight School, you are a current student or graduated, be sure to join that group if you're not in there already. And if you would, follow me on Instagram at WorldwideCube. So thank you guys so much. Like, comment, subscribe, soar to your full potential, and have a great day. See ya.